Come on, Jet.
I'm up.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to our inaugural Legends of Chocolate honoree celebration. My name is Matthew Sarave. I am the founder of the Big Chocolate Show. My partner, Chocolate James, Jack Friedrichsen. Got to do it.
Well done.
My job tonight is to welcome you all here this evening. So honored to be able to share this experience with all of you here tonight. And now I get to introduce our host for the evening. So our host for the evening is from the Pix 11 News. Her name is Lisa Mateo. And what can I say about Lisa Mateo? What am I allowed to say?
We love her.
We love Lisa Mateo. That's absolutely true. Lisa has worked at Pix 11 News. She started off there as an intern, bringing coffee to the news people. She ran teleprompter there and has worked her way all the way up to on-air personality. She has her own television show now called Celebrity Tastemakers on 6 p.m. on Sundays. Is that correct? I got it right? And you know, I'm up here with a cocktail. I feel like Dean Martin. So that was my one joke for the evening. My job now is to introduce our host. Please welcome Lisa Mateo.
Hello, everyone. I feel like I should have a cocktail too up here. I feel a little left out. Yeah, my name is Lisa Mateo. I was actually here Friday morning early, and we were doing a live remote here, and it was fantastic. Who has ever eaten chocolate at 6 in the morning? Yes, thank you. Now you know what it's like. We want to get straight to our Legends of Chocolate. We're going to get to our Fave Awards in just a bit, so we're going to jump right in. So thank you so much. I want to introduce a couple of presenters we have. Our first presenter is Bill Yassis, and he is a former White House pastry chef from 2007 to 2014 for President George Bush and Barack Obama. And listen to this. President Barack Obama said of him, "Whatever pie you like, he will make it, and it will be the best pie you've ever eaten." That's exactly what he said. He also said it will be, he nicknamed Yassis the Crust Master. There you go. And he is now the owner of the pastry company Perfect Pie, which is based here in New York City, and is the co-author with Peter Kaminsky of the soon-to-be-released book, The Sweet Spot, Dialing Back Sugar and Amping Up Flavor. Bill Yassis, please come up and present our first Legends of Chocolate Award.
Thank you very much. Exciting evening. And I'm particularly honored to be introducing this first legend. And it was a big part of my chocolate education. I was a pastry chef for many years before I knew where chocolate came from. I don't know what I thought. It was, you just bought it in the store. Then when I discovered it was a fruit, I had a whole angle for arguing that it was actually health food. And that occurred because the wonderful Maricel Presilla invited me on a trip to Venezuela where I learned about chocolate plantations. Merrill Evans, another great supporter of Big Chocolate, was there as well. And so when I came back from that trip and I learned that there was a book that had been written about the very intricate history and very rich and colorful history of chocolate, I got it right away. That book, of course, was The True History of Chocolate, in which Michael and Sophie Coe put together the information about chocolate, its cultural, its scientific, its chemical, biological, all the information about how chocolate was this magical ingredient that had been considered magic or religious or inspiring for 2,000 or 3,000 years. So the Mayans, as we know, made a spiritual link between cacao and their lives. In fact, cacao was part of their cosmology. They believed that the cocoa tree was part of the creation of the universe. So it was kind of their version of the Big Bang. We have, since that time, chocolate has exploded in many different ways, many different kinds of interest and uses. This particular event is a perfect example of how many bean-to-bar chocolate companies exist now. But it's good to remember that back when Sophie and Michael Coe wrote that book, that it was not really understood how rich and deep the chocolate history was. So it's a great honor to be here. We have a medallion, which I don't have with me. I'll just imagine. Oh, we do. Okay, absolutely. Okay, a little stand. So this, you're supposed to bite it, I think. This gold medallion, Michael, thank you for launching that ship of state on chocolate so many years ago. And it still is a great source of reference and a very amusing read as well. If I can get to this fine print, I'll read you. I think the only way to really honor a writer is to read some of his writing. He's talking here about how the bishops and popes of the 18th century were arguing about whether chocolate could be consumed during the fast. And they, of course, it was sort of one of these arguments like how many angels fit on the head of a pin. And he writes, that's not the right one. Let me catch up to you, catch up to myself here. This is from that chapter. The arguments for and against the question raged among ecclesiastics, laymen, for over 2.5 centuries, and even involved popes. The literature on it is enormous, and for the most part, tiresome. With that, I'll leave you. Thank you.
Now, I'm not the guy who wrote the book. It was my wife, Sophie, who really wrote the book. And she got interested in this. She was an anthropologist and a really good cook, and a long interest in the history of cooking, which wasn't a very fashionable academic subject back when she first got into this. In fact, it was probably never taught anything like this in any major university. But she decided that she was going to do the history of New World cuisines, not just, counting up the calories or how much proteins you had or how many carbohydrates, but rather how it was actually prepared and appreciated among the different cultures of the pre-Columbian New World, including the Aztec, the Maya, and the Inca of South America. And I was able to help her on the Aztec part because that's my field, is the ancient civilizations of Mexico and Central America. And believe it or not, I can actually read written Aztec, written in the with Roman numerals, and I helped her a lot on that, but she knew what she was doing. And every summer she had been going to Oxford, England, where the great Oxford food conferences take place on food and cuisine, which are wonderful events, international events that bring in everybody from well-known chefs to well-known biologists to well-known historians, well-known anthropologists, everybody interested in food and culture. And there she met, these were really organized by a man who had been the British ambassador to Laos, and who had written at one point the only royal cookbook ever put out for the public on royal food in Luang Prabang, Laos, in the royal palace, done with the chef of the then king. At any rate, Sophie said she was going to do this book on chocolate because her previous book really didn't cover the subject properly. So what was she going to call it? We used to travel to Italy all the time, constantly, every year. And she did a lot of her research among the wonderful old libraries in Rome and other great Italian cities on the history of chocolate after it arrived in Europe. However, when it came to who had written chocolate history before then, it was pretty sad. There weren't any such things as a real, true history. She named the book The True History of Chocolate after the great book on the true history of the conquest of Mexico by Bernal Diaz, one of the conquistadores. So she was going to write the true history of chocolate. Why did she put true in there? Because the big chocolate companies, the great international ones, you name them, I'm not going to, you know what they are. Every time they talk about the history of chocolate, it was nothing but a pack of lies from beginning to end. They made it up because they thought that these dumb people who lived in the New World before the wonderful Europeans came in, really, they were too stupid to know what had happened. And but nothing was known really about the Aztecs or Incas or anybody like that, which wasn't true. And she was a great scholar. She went into all the archives. I could help her on certain things because, as I say, Mayas and Aztecs, that's my bread and butter. So she started it, and she outlined it. Thames and Hudson picked the book up. We had an absolutely wonderful editor there, Colin Ridler in London, who I think is the greatest of all editors for archaeological books. I've done a lot of my own books through him. And she got the first 2 chapters written, and then she fell mortally ill. It was quite clear that she was not going to live more than a few months. And I told her, no matter what happens, I'll finish it for her. And when she died, I took everything to Italy, to my beloved Rome, and I spent about 6 months there with all of her notes and everything, and basically finished the book there. And, it wasn't just a labor of love. I loved to write that book. It was really fun. And I've met, ever since then, so many wonderful people in the chocolate world. It's been, for me, a new history, and I've really enjoyed it. It needs another edition, I'll have to admit, because so much is known. But at any rate, I want to thank you all for this and remind you that you're really honoring Sophie, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
All right, one more round of applause for one of our legends of chocolate. Excellent. Okay, I'd like to introduce our next presenter for our next legend of chocolate. Mark Christian unveiled the C Spot. It's an online source of many things chocolate, and in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. in 2010. He earned his CHD while researching the chocolate underground, surveying barsmiths in many corners of the earth before delving into the seedy world of cacao breeding and genetics, where he was mentored by Dr. Basil Bartley in Brazil. He is owner of the private travel firm airtech.com. Mark has been able to travel extensively in cacao's 2020 zone. Please welcome our next presenter, Mark Christian.
Good evening, everyone. Mention the word genetics, and many people think of GMOs, that sinister science where people in white smock coats inside cold refrigerated labs are manipulating the code for freak frankenfoods. But if I were to tell you that there's a geneticist who's 100% GMO free and who spends as much time in the field as in the lab, and occasionally comes across things like blue pods hanging from Theobroma cacao trees, Theobroma cacao being the tree from which all chocolate derives, and blue pods are about as rare as a blue moon. Furthermore, this geneticist has developed the sensory skills to appreciate the finer aspects of premium chocolate, unlike, I hate to say, many of his colleagues. And if that weren't enough, in 2008, this geneticist led an investigation that went against the dogma that there were only 3 varietals in the world of Theobroma cacao, those being Criollo, Forastero, and Trinitario, which when you think about it is an insult to Mother Nature, with all the abundance and biodiversification to the naked eye. And in so doing, through rigorous research and analysis and state-of-the-art satellite markers, now SNPs, he and his team reclassified the species into a dozen and counting individual varietals. The importance of that is in the future, we'll have a broader array of flavor profiles in the world of chocolate. And so, one other aspect I think we should not forget too is that, let's not forget, chocolate and genetics is about, well, let's just say it, it's about sex, it's about DNA, reproduction, and in the case of cacao, promiscuity, because this is one promiscuous plant. So the essence of all this is this. Genetics represents the deep-rooted beneath the surface fundament without which there would be no chocolate in the world. We're talking, of course, it bears responsibility for the tree and for the species and really for the entire industry. And I like to think of chocolate similar to the comics section of the newspaper. It takes the edge off the news in this beautiful, crazy world that we inhabit, whether it's fake news or real news. So I hope that you would join me, because I consider it a real privilege to be able to introduce to you a genuine legend of chocolate, and if you would please, a really warm welcome, a New York City Saturday night ovation, if you would, for Dr. Juan Carlos Motamayor. Dr. Motamayor, this is the gold medal you have been wanting to win at the Olympics all these years.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, actually, I don't know what to say, but thank you to the organizers. I'm very honored to be here. I just have a story to share. So for this study that was mentioned on the classification of the genetics of cocoa, I had to collect samples of cocoa from South America to Central America. And there was this big debate between the Mesoamericans claiming that cocoa was originated in Central America and the ones that thought that it could be the cacao was born in South America instead. So I went to collect samples close to Chichen Itza in Yucatan, close to the Mayan ruins in the state of Yucatan in Mexico. And from there was a study that was published by a team in Berkeley that said that there were unique cocoa trees that show that cocoa was indeed originated in Central America, and that's how chocolate evolved and was domesticated there. So when I went to collect the samples, I had to walk a day with some guides there, and after a day of walking, the guides told me, you have to continue by yourself because we are afraid to continue with you because we forgot the rituals to calm this entity called the achul that have to you have to do this ritual so that they won't attack you, or otherwise, they could kill you. So I was very scared, and I finally got to the place. I had to go with a rope, and I was so scared that I collected 2 samples of trees that looked like cacao, but they were actually different when we look at the DNA. And we found that indeed the cocoa that was, or the samples that were analyzed by this team from Berkeley was actually the wrong plant, and it wasn't cacao. And the study showed that cacao was originated in South America instead. So I feel that I deserve the award after that experience. So thank you so much.
All right, I'd like to call up our next presenter to the stage, Peter Kaminsky. He wrote Underground Gourmet for New York Magazine for 4 years, and his outdoors column appeared in the New York Times for 20 years. He is a longtime contributor to Food and Wine and the former managing editor of National Lampoon. He is co-author of Bill Yosis, who met before, Bill Yosis, of the soon-to-be-released book, The Sweet Spot, Dialing Back Sugar and Amping Up Flavor. Please welcome Peter Kaminsky.
I think I've eaten chocolate every day since I've been born, or I've tried to. Whoa, there it goes. It's really great to be here for John, who I think of as ground zero of the bean to bar artisan chocolate movement. So I was happy that he asked me. He said, I probably know less about chocolate than many people in this room. So John said, tell a story. So about 10 years ago, or 15 years, one loses count as the years go by, I was doing a story for Condé Nast Traveler, and John said his great goal in life was to find cacao with gentle enough tannins that maybe he could end up making a 95% sugar-free bar. So there were these Mayans who FedExed him some beans, and he really loved them. So he said, why don't I accompany him to meet them? And he had an ulterior motive as well. He had a very good ecological plan. So we went down to Cabon in the Alto Verapaz of Guatemala, and which had been pretty much devastated by government counterinsurgency. And the rainforest was just being decimated. And John's idea was, if he could get these Mayans, if he could pay them the world market price for chocolate, which at the time of the offer was $2,500 a ton, then they wouldn't cut down the rainforest for corn anymore. They just go buy corn. So he went down there to meet them to see if they would ferment the beans according to his specifications. And so we went from one town to another, and finally got to this river that was in flood, and they had to crank us across on the ferry, and then like 9 miles up a dirt road. And we got to this village, and the Mayans were there, and we met in this longhouse, and it was just charming. All the little girls had on their very best, Sunday dresses, and all the men were lined up, and John sat down and started to go over his offer. And he said, where's your lawyer? And they said, our lawyer? He said, Carlos. And he said, Carlos, that's my son. He's 16 years old. He's the only one with a computer. He lives in the town. So that's who John had done the negotiations with. So John said, oh, so you have to understand, there were, according to my understanding, 23 Mayan tongues. And John spoke English, we had a Spanish Mayan speaker, and then we had to go down the telephone tree to say hello for 20 minutes, and hello would come back to you. So John said, I'm going to change the deal. Price has gone up, I'm going to make it $2,800 a ton. And so that seemed to me like the fairest thing I'd ever heard. And then a hand goes up in the back of the room, and this guy, you know, one of the farmers, one of the villagers says, well, wait a second. I live 1.5 miles down the road, and you're going to give me $2,800 a ton, and I have to schlep my cacao up here, and these people live up in the village, and they don't have to, you know, walk 10 feet. So that's not very fair. So John said, you know what? I'll pay for the truck rental. And did you pay for the truck rental, John? Yeah, he did. So this is the legendary truck renter and bean-to-bar chocolate inventor, John Scharffenberger.
Thank you, Peter. I have to say, making chocolate the way we did was just an amazing adventure. And Robert Steinberg, who started the company with me, and I had so much fun going to so many places, meeting amazing people, like the people that Peter just described, to source the cacao that we eventually used. I've got to say that at the end of the day, the only thing we really used to make our decisions were flavor. And indeed, it was that flavor that drove me to go to Cahabon and work with Peter to go see them. And we went to lots of other places, not Peter and I, but other people. And it was all about flavor. Chocolate is an experience. It's hedonistic. You know, it's just something we want to just, you know, we do it for our own pleasure. It's not for anything else. And so, in a sense, that's what I learned in the wine world, is that you should, you know, satisfy yourself. And Robert and I did that. So when we started making our chocolate, we had lots of great, information from people like Michael, actually, and Sophie, about where these things came from. But at the end of the day, we had to, you know, go even deeper into, you know, 10,000 years ago, into cultures that have no name, to really figure out how cacao got to different places, and to go to those places and find things that then the flavor rang true, and we did that. And so it's been an experience of pleasure and of taste, and I think that's really what we stuck to, and it's what, you know, I think made Scharffenberger really great. And I'm not there anymore, but let's not talk about that. But there, you know, there's so many wonderful things now. We were the first group doing this, and now there's 180 or 90 or 100, who knows how many people doing what we did. And I just hope that flavor remains the groundwork of chocolate. None of these, it's nothing intellectual. It's only pleasure, and it's pleasure we should pursue. Thank you very much.
Okay, now our final presenter for our Legends of Chocolate, Curtis Vreeland. He is the president of Vreeland & Associates. He has been observing and writing about chocolate in the industry for close to 20 years. And he is also a longtime contributor to Candy Industry magazine. Please welcome Curtis Vreeland.
Oh boy, it's blinding up here. So, you are a very impressive conclave of chocolate worshipers, so I just want you to appreciate the gathering here that's come together, that Michael and his team have put together, and also to the committee, Alexandra, Clay, for selecting these award winners, because it's such a 360 view of the chocolate world, going from historians who wrote a seminal book about the history of chocolate to genetics, to John Scharffenberger, who put artisan chocolate on the map and to our next awardee. But it is that 360 view, which is pretty incredible. It's not just an award to a chocolate maker. It's more encompassing. So a quick note about my background. My exposure to chocolate happened about 30 years ago, rather modestly, when I worked for Hershey. So, and it's been all up since then. So how many of us have had the pleasure of participating in one of Ed Seguine's presentations, like at FCIA twice a year when you host the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Project? How many of us have witnessed his enthusiasm, or should I say his animation, his deft chocolate tasting techniques? It's incredible. His huge glossary of flavor descriptors that helps us in the audience make sense of what we're tasting. It all adds up to one thing. Ed has a passion for flavor. His mission is to keep quality and taste front and center in the evolution that starts with a selection of beans and ends with the creation of the bar. And that has been his guiding light for the last 33 years in the chocolate industry, starting at Guittard, Mars, back to Guittard, and now currently as, where do we have it? Help me out here, Ed. It's Ed Seguine, Cacao Chocolate Consultants, and also a consultant to the Guittard Chocolate Company. And the website, yeah. So Ed, come on up. Grip and grin.
Oh, that is really beautiful.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
Oh, and one last thing as a teaser. We're going to see if anybody in the audience can guess the first product that Ed worked on 33 years ago. Go ahead. Tell them what it is.
The challenge is whether I will remember. That was a long time ago. I've had 3 careers, one with Procter & Gamble, and then the longest with the Guittard family, and then a shorter one with Mars, and now doing it on my own and with Guittard again. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone here and for the organizers of this event for this prestigious honor, and for the honor to be part of this group with Michael, his wife Sophie, Juan Carlos, and John Scharffenberger. I have known them for quite some time. It's less with Michael, but your book and Sophie's book has been part of my beginnings. And I did read the original Diaz book. It was pretty cool to see the writings of a conquistador. We have been uniquely blessed to take this back to Michael's book. Cacao is not only the tree at the beginning of the universe, it gives dimension and breadth and joy to our lives. My wife has a t-shirt that she wears all the time. It says, "Give me all your chocolate and nobody gets hurt." This is what you say when you go to rob a bank. But that's how we feel about chocolate. It is passion, romance of faraway places. It's endearment. It's woven into the warp and weft of our lives. It is part of who we are, and I hope it is part of what we may become. Here, we spoke about the diversity of the genetics. John talked about the diversity of flavor that he's seen. That's what the god Quetzalcoatl also brought. Not only life-giving material to mankind, but the joy of life in the diversity, the complexity of flavor. There is as much diversity and complexity and flavor in cacao as there is diversity of personalities and types amongst mankind. We must never lose that diversity. We must never do to cacao what we've done to tomatoes, strawberries, long stem roses, or apples. We must preserve and maintain it, and we can only do so when we appreciate it, when we recognize it ourselves, and when we value it and take that value into the lives of those people to whom we are beholden for our living, the farmers of the world that produce this marvelous crop. Thank you very much for this honor.
All right, one more round of applause for all of our Legends of Chocolate recipients. You know, without their contributions, this world of chocolate would be less delicious. Okay, let's get to our Fave Awards. So what are the Fave Awards? They were created in 2016 as a way to increase the level of engagement between Big Chocolate Show attendees and the exhibitors. Now, all Big Chocolate Show attendees are taste explorers who are encouraged to taste with a purpose and then vote for their favorites in a dozen categories. I'd like to invite now Clay Gordon to the stage to talk about our Fave Award winners.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here this evening. In addition to the Fave Awards, I was one of the people who was working on the Legends of Chocolate, and I cannot tell you just how pleased I am at the recognition that we were able to give to each other this evening for the work that has been done. Ed's words on where we need to take this, the stories that were shared by Michael about the work that he did with Sophie, the John Scharffenberger's and Peter Kaminsky's stories, Bill's. I mean, it's just all of these things remind us of just how central cacao and chocolate are to what it is that we're doing here and what it is that we're celebrating here this weekend at the Big Chocolate Show. So the 2016 Fave Award winners, we have the ability through technology to enable all of the attendees to taste what it is that is presented out for tasting here, and then to register what it is that they thought were among the things that they thought stood out in their minds, the thing that they wanted to be able to recognize and through their enjoyment. And we're going to be presenting some awards and medals this evening to the winners from last year. And next year we'll be presenting the winners from this year. I'd like to start off with our favorite sustainable category. Right? The winners there include Via Cuyaya for their matcha green tea. And if you'd like to come up and accept the award, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Tanya, you good?
Thank you so much.
Very, very much. And if you could stay here, I'd also like to invite Colin Hartman of Harper Macaw up for their 74% Atlantic Forest, Mata Atlântica, Brazil bar. Colin? Yeah. Okay. He's silver. He's silver. Right. I know Colin was here earlier. Okay. So, okay. All right. I'd also like to invite up Ron Paprocki from Gotham Bar and Grill, Gotham Chocolate, for his lemon and olive oil as the silver in the favorite bonbon and truffle category. We're shaking hands first. Thank you very much. Stay here. Great. Would you like to stay here? All right. In the favorite milk chocolate bar category, we have Rocklets for their Earl Grey milk chocolate. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now, an embarrassment of riches. We're blessed this year with just an extraordinary presence of producers, both of cacao and chocolate from Ecuador. And one producer from Ecuador last year just basically hit it out of the park. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce for favorite dark chocolate bar, the 75% single origin Miraflores, for the Chocolate Blanco, favorite white chocolate bar, for the 65% peanuts and salt in the favorite anything with nuts category, new and noteworthy, 65% smoked salt bar, for the best packaging as well as best in show, and Govee. Gold award winning for every single one of those categories. Right? So anyway, here we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Anyway, it's our pleasure. All right.
Thanks.
So, quick words?
Yeah. Good night, everyone. This is going to Ecuador. Please, a big applause to the best cocoa producer country in the entire world. I want to thank also to the organizers. It's, I think, the best show in America. Also, I want to thank my partner, Jaime Gonzalez, and my ex-partners, Mario and Oscar. They are a big piece of these awards. Also, I want to thank my wife and my daughter, my whole family. They mean a lot in what Govee is. And I mean, the whole producers of Ecuadorian chocolate, we are doing really good in the chocolate business. That's what I want to say. Thank you to everyone. Good night to everyone.
A little story here. Tanya Molina from Via Cucayo became very interested in what it is that we were doing at the Big Chocolate Show last year. And I'm quite certain that she had no idea what she was getting herself into when she said, "I'd love to organize an Ecuadorian pavilion for you." She did it last year, she did it again, and you did a fabulous job. You did a fabulous job. So, Tanya.
Thank you, Clay. That's so nice words. Well, as I said in the conference that we made yesterday, Ecuador is proud of our cacao, and right now we are proud to making the best chocolate in the world. Not just Villa Cuyaya. We have right now a pavilion with 15 companies that are working so hard to give the world the best chocolate of the world. So we have to be proud. And Ecuadorian people is a very kind person, very hard workers. So we are proud to be Ecuadorian. We are proud of our cacao, and we are proud of our country. Thank you.
My mom never let me have chocolate. I was raised vegan, and I could only have carob. So this is what happens when you're not allowed to have chocolate. 4 years ago, I was sitting in Whole Foods and interviewing a potential apprentice to work with me. And I, lo and behold, met the person after, I don't know, maybe 80 interviews. And Mary Beth is definitely with me on the gold. We really worked together hard to find beautiful, sustainable, and clean products to make our Rocklets Earl Grey. So I appreciate Mary Beth very much.
So Ron, a quick note?
Thank you very much for the award from last year's show, inaugural show. Also, we brought in some chocolates today for everyone to try, including the lemon olive oil that had taken this award. So we'll see when we're passing those out.
Everybody will get an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of hard work, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of dedication to what it is that's going on. We encourage every single one of you to go and talk with these people and to share your passion, your dedication, your fascination with cocoa and chocolate with them. And with that, the formal part of the awards presentation, we have, I believe, a few closing remarks from Lisa, and then we're going to head back to the cocktail party. All right, so a little more drinking, and a little more food, and a little more conversation. So.
All right, we all know an event like this has a lot of volunteers, a lot of sponsors, so we want to get to those and just thank everyone for all their time for today. First, our 3 media sponsors. We have Pix 11, Cocoa Walk, Dessert Professional Magazine. Thank you very much. And now for the rest of our sponsors, just hold your applause till their end because there is quite a list. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So here, thank you to our sponsors this evening, Atlantic Confectionery Company, Cabot Creamery, Gotham Chocolate, the Guittard Chocolate Company, Noteworthy Chocolates, Voila Chocolat. Matter of fact, I just had one of yours, so thank you very much for that mojito one. It was delicious. Cronenberg for their Cronenberg Blanc, Marston's for their Young Double Chocolate Stout. We have Nicky Luke's Treats, Zier Vodka, Bodegas Toro Albara, Bodegas Carcello, Klein Family Cellars, Primo Baci, Pacific Rim, Bren, Tamdu, Kilcoman, Amrut, and Diplomatico. And finally, we want to acknowledge all the volunteers also for helped and given out so much of their time this evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our sponsors. I hope you enjoyed your evening. Thank you very much.